My name is Tony Harben and I'm one of our compliance specialists here at Caretower. GDPR compliance is a hot topic right now, so let's take a look at what it will mean for your business and the sort of things that you're going to have to do to prepare for it. It's important to understand that the GDPR is the most significant change in data protection legislation in the past 20 years. It applies to every company, large and small, that processes personal information as part of their business activities. You can't ignore it just because you're a small business. For the past 18 years, data protection has been covered under the UK Data Protection Act of 1998. Now, needless to say, things have changed a lot since then. Our use of the internet has grown exponentially. We shop more online. We certainly socialise more online. And most importantly, computer crime has grown to a point whereby it now makes up more than half of all crime committed in the UK. Yet until the GDPR came along, there was no obligation for a company that had experienced a data breach to tell its customers what had happened. And to make matters worse, the penalties handed out under the Data Protection Act simply weren't severe enough for companies to take seriously. And that's really what the GDPR is all about. It brings together all of the different European data protection laws under a single umbrella regulation and brings everything up to date. It also now makes financial sense for organisations to put the right procedures and controls in place to protect personal information. Sitting on your hands and sucking up any fines that the ICO hands out is not an attractive option anymore. There are requirements for you to document your IT procedures and to perform risk assessments whenever you share personal information. You also have to tell the ICO within 72 hours when you suffer a breach and only to retain information for as long as is necessary. You probably know that the maximum potential fine if you get it badly wrong is increased to 4% of your global turnover. To put that into context, if the GDPR had been enforced when TalkTalk was breached, they could have faced a fine of around €70 million. Now in reality, if you suffer an isolated breach, you probably won't be fined 4% of your turnover unless your internal processes are so broken that you're guilty of negligence. It'll certainly help your case if you can prove that you're on board with the regulation and that you're heading in the right direction. But if you have a number of breaches and you fail to learn your lesson, that's where the larger fines are likely to be imposed. You'll also note the GDPR comes into force in 2018. And that's because some of the changes that companies will have to make to comply with GDPR go to the very heart of how they do business. We're talking with a number of companies about GDPR right now, and some of them are going to have to review the way that they work with their business partners to incorporate GDPR's principle of privacy by design. These things take time. In fact, it's a fairly safe bet that 2 years is just not enough for large organisations to complete their GDPR programmes. But again, as long as they're making enough progress in the right direction, they should in theory be in a good position to defend themselves in front of the ICO if they have a breach. And while there may be some short-term pain in implementing the controls necessary for GDPR compliance, most of it's good common sense. By incorporating privacy by design into your business process, you'll reduce your risk profile. And better data security is fundamentally a good thing for business, especially when you take into account that the largest cost associated with a data breach is generally the loss of business reputation and lost customers. So what's changed in the new regulation that businesses need to be aware of? Well, the GDPR increases the scope of what's classed as personally identifiable information. It now includes anything that can be used to identify an individual, and that includes things like cookies, email addresses, and IP addresses. Most importantly, you need to be able to demonstrate consent for processing a person's information. On a basic level, just because someone is your customer doesn't mean that you can bombard them with emails or sell their information on. From a practical point of view, that means making sure that you have a proper marketing opt-in process on your website and clear opt-out processes for all marketing communications. If you don't comply with the principal consent, then watch out, because a number of companies have already found that this is a costly mistake to make. There is also a major shift of power back to the consumer. Anyone can request all of the information that you hold about them on your systems, and you have to get it to them within 30 days. There's also a right to erasure, whereby someone can request that you delete all information about them on your systems. Now, it goes without saying that some personal details need to be better protected than others. You need to focus on the areas that present the biggest risk, especially where you're using new processes or new technology. What does that mean? Well, if the information that you hold could be used to build a fake identity or open an online account, then you need to go the extra mile to protect it. If you're moving data to the cloud or setting up some form of omni-channel marketing initiative, then I'd suggest that you need to make absolutely sure that any personal data is adequately protected. These are the 12 things that the ICO says companies should be doing now. What strikes me is that most of them are procedural and all to do with getting the basics right. But that doesn't mean that they're simple. What's more, if you add everything together, I'm sure you'll understand why the ICO is recommending that you make a start now. In many ways, the most important part of the whole process is probably right at the top of the list, making sure that senior management understand that GDPR is more than just an IT problem. The GDPR has the potential to impact every aspect of the business, and that's why it needs input from the boardroom down. Perhaps the most important step is to appoint someone as a data protection officer who can coordinate the efforts of the legal, HR, IT and risk functions so that you can get everyone pulling in the same direction. So what does the process look like? Well, given that we already have a recognised framework for risk management in ISO 27001 and 27005, it seems to make sense that you use these processes but just adjust them to incorporate the requirements of the GDPR. You'll probably recognise most of these steps as standard information governance practice, and I'm sure that many of you do this anyway. You need to understand how you collect and process personal information as part of your business operations. You need to build data maps of where information is stored, perform a risk assessment, and build policies that are aligned with the requirements of the GDPR. Once you've done that, you'll be able to identify the types of controls that you'll need to enforce and monitor compliance with your policy. And the good news is that by doing all of this, you should end up with the right level of data protection for your business and be in a much better place to defend yourself in front of the ICO in the event that your security is breached. What you can see here are some of the tough questions that you're going to have to ask about the way that your company handles personal information. Who collects it? Where do you store it? And who do you share it with? Now, once you've worked that out, you'll need to make sure that you have the right processes and controls in place to implement privacy by design. You'll need to make sure that you're able to find personal information to respond to a subject access request, and you'll certainly need to make sure that you can detect a breach when it happens and respond to it. Where Caretower fit in is it will listen to how you see the GDPR having an impact on your business. We can support you with consultancy software and services that will help you to apply the right controls to protect personal information, identify and respond to breaches, and minimise your IT risk. In summary, if you process personal information, you probably have a long to-do list between now and when the GDPR becomes law in May 2018. What I've shown here are the issues relating to IT compliance and risk management on the left, while the points relating to IT security are on the right. Ultimately, you need to be able to balance both sides of this equation to make sure that you end up with a security policy that supports both GDPR and your business processes, together with the right security controls to make you compliant and reduce risk. Finally, if you're looking for a place to start with GDPR compliance, we may be able to help. We speak to a lot of people who recognise that they need to do something about GDPR, but they need to show senior management what the problem is before getting the go-ahead to spend time and money on it. We can offer you a free risk assessment which will scan your servers to give you visibility of exactly where personal information is stored on your network. It will also highlight any potential issues that exist because that information is accessible by too many people. What you get back is a report which gives you a baseline to work from for GDPR compliance. Once you know where your personal information is and who has access to it, you should find it a whole lot easier to prioritise your investment and build a business case. The only thing that we ask from you is about 2 hours of your time over the course of a fortnight. If you'd like to take up the offer, please visit our website www.caretower.com/free risk assessment to register, and we'll get back to you to run through the process. Well, I hope that you found that brief presentation useful in understanding some of the challenges that GDPR is going to create for you. If you'd like to know more, please visit our website or email gdpr@caretower.com.